I'm Dan Evans, and this is my 1995 Chevy Suburban. I'm Desert Grove Overland, and figured I'd make a little introduction video and explain why I'm doing all this. So let's start with what it is and what I've got going on with it. It's a 1995 Chevy Suburban K2500. It means it's an 8-lug. It's got the 454 throttle body injection and the 4L80E transmission, 14-bolt rear end. I thought it was a pretty good start. The motor is not my favorite thing in the world, but knowing what I know now, I would have bought a 96 or newer. What's going on in the front here, I've got an ARB bumper that I picked up secondhand off Facebook Marketplace. I only paid $500 for it. Thought it was a pretty good deal, and had to drive to California in the middle of the night to get it, but you do what you do on Marketplace. And then I've got the Badlands Apex. There's 12,000 pound winch in there. I've had that on a couple rigs, and they've always been pretty good to me. I know that you can go better and get Warren, but hard to beat $450 on sale. And then sticking with the Harbor Freight theme, I've got the Road Shock LED off-road lights that they sell there, and thought I'd give them a try rather than anything else. I kind of like the way the pods look on these ARB bumpers. They're the 4-bulb lights. One's a spot, one's a flood. And then I'm really impressed with them. They're about $100 a light. And then moving on over here, we've got the wheel and tire combo. They're Method 703s with Cooper Discover Strongholds AT in a 275/70R17. I haven't had them very long, but so far I've been pretty pleased with them. I've never run Coopers on anything else, so we'll see how that pans out in the future. And then sticking with this side of the truck, up here we've got a shower box that I built out of a Harbor Freight Apache case with a whole bunch of PVC piping in it. I can link a photo of what's going on the inside in the video. And then it's pressurized with tire inflator there, runs a house hose off the side there, and then fills in the top. That's pretty much everything going on the side here. And then in the back, I built these drawers. So on the back side of the truck here, I built these drawers a couple weekends ago, and my dad helped me out with them. Neither he or I are cabinet builders, but we both own a window company here locally. We pretty handy with tools, but figured we'd give these a go. I've built a couple drawer systems before for different trucks that I've owned, and this was definitely the biggest and best version I've ever built yet. There's still improvements to be made, but we're working on it. On this side, we keep the family food for camping, and my stove goes here, obviously. Keep some spices on this side. All my pots and pans are right here. And then in the back side here, this is where the dry food's gonna go whenever we're out and about. It's also where I keep things like rain jackets, some spare reading material, because I do drive a 30-year-old truck and you never know when that's gonna break. Keep the kids emergency, we're potty training currently, so some pull-ups, some wipes, some sunscreen. And then we also keep a first aid kit in the back here. Then on the other side of it, I keep my recovery gear that I don't store other places in my truck. A lot of little stuff like soft shackles and my tree strap. A spare set of gloves, and then I keep a rifle in my truck, mostly for the fact that I hunt a lot, and here in Oregon we're pretty lucky. We get a mountain lion tag with every sports pack you buy at the beginning of the year. So I keep a rifle back here, just the off chance you run into a lion that you can get after, or you know, you never know. We also keep that in here because the world's definitely a weird place and it's changing, so never a bad idea to keep a little family security around. I built it kind of this L tiered shape for a reason. On this side, eventually I'm going to get a powered fridge back here that I'll run into solar on the roof rack that I'll show you in a minute. And then on this side, I built it quite a bit shorter because we have a black lab that goes with us pretty often. And then I've got her a gunner kennel that we put her in when we're out and about. And that's quite a bit taller than my fridge side. I didn't want my whole drawer to be this short just because I like having the extra storage, so we made it the two sizes, and so far I'm really liking that. It would have been a heck of a lot easier to build it one size, but you know, I don't do things easy ever. So on this side of the truck we have a Tough Stuff Overland awning that I picked up on Marketplace. It's got an annex room that I can attach to that. That's part of where I'm going to keep the family whenever we're out camping, I think. I haven't really made my mind up with that. I think I'm also going to pick up a rooftop tent for the back half of my rack here that I'll show you in a second. And then over here we have another one of the Apache rifle cases that I use for all of my tools and a little more recovery gear. Obviously I've got my traction boards on the top of that case. And then on this side, we'll start talking about that rack. I built that by myself and with the help of a couple friends and a guy that I know through work. And we designed that whole thing. It took me about 4.5 weeks to get it all put together by the time it's said and done. And I did that mostly because I'm stubborn. I really like building things myself, and I have a hard time paying other people to do stuff that I think I can do myself. I have all the files, so I'm going to start selling these before too long. That's what Desert Grove Overland's first product is going to be, is these GMT400 roof racks. It's made out of 1/8" steel on the sides here, and then it's got aluminum T-slot crossbars. It makes a pretty modular system. The feet tie into the factory roof racks that most of these had at least. And then you need to add one more foot at the very front there. They're pretty stout so far. I've been testing it for a couple weeks. Just on that front crossbar, there's about 200 pounds worth of stuff bolted up there between the water and the toolbox there. And then eventually, like I said, on this back part of it here that's blank, I'm going to pick up a rooftop tent. It's just something for me and one other person to sleep in, hopefully. You know, for the trips that I just take one of my kids or my wife and I get a weekend by ourselves. Overall, this thing's been really great. And I guess now let's talk about why I'm starting a business with old trucks. So the whole idea of Desert Grove started, probably about 3 months ago. And I've been watching a lot of Australian overland type videos, you know, they call it touring over there, but things like 4-wheel drive 24/7, stuff like that. And they're always debating on whether old vehicles are better than the new ones that they build. I started looking at the market here in the US, and gosh, if you really want to go just order parts off a shelf, you pretty much need to buy a new Tacoma, a new 4Runner, a new Tundra or a Jeep Wrangler Gladiator, one of those platforms. And I really didn't want to have to refinance our home in order to build something that me and my family could take out and enjoy camping together and growing up and making those memories. My wife and I, before we had kids, did a lot of traveling in our car. Most of that was in a little Subaru that I had that was pretty much just a beater, but boy, it went everywhere. And whenever we had kids, I decided that it was time to get a 4Runner or something bigger and grow up and be a dad. So I bought one of these GMT400 Suburbans. I bought a 1500 at that time, and started kind of doing what I am doing with this one on that, and life just took us a different direction. I ended up getting a job and had 4 or 5 vehicles at the house and decided that one just didn't need to be around. So we sold it, and then I went and bought a Jeep Wrangler or a Jeep Cherokee because I thought we could just go. Thought that would be big enough, to be honest, and that was foolish of me. My wife and I have twin daughters. They're 3 now, so at the time they were about 1. And when their seats face backwards, like they're supposed to when they're little bitty babies, I could drive my Cherokee with both kids in the Jeep, and we were all pretty comfortable. And I ended up selling that thing about 3 weeks after we turned their car seats around so they could face forward finally, because I couldn't drive it physically with the kids in there. Obviously, I'm a bigger guy. And besides that, I ended up taking that thing out by myself a couple times when they were little, and it just made me realize how much stuff my kids need in particular when we go camping. And that Cherokee just wasn't going to be big enough without having to tow some kind of trailer. So we sold that, and I ended up picking this thing up. I've always liked these GMT400 body styles. Both my grandparents had them when I was growing up, and so I'm kind of fond of them in the first place. But I started looking at that market, and there's nothing that you can really buy, and if you can find it, it's really expensive for these things. So the plan with the company is to kind of build some stuff for some older cars that I think Americans ought to be looking at in order to affordably get out and enjoy the outdoors. You know, I have a hard time calling it overlanding because it's also my daily driver at the moment. But we need to focus more on some older stuff in this country and start building the market for older cars and more affordable entry-level vehicles. When you have to spend $80,000 or $100,000 on a car to start with, and then another $30,000 or $40,000 on bolting on stuff to it, it makes it pretty limited on who can get into this hobby. And I really want to focus on people like me who, you know, hopefully can build things themselves a little bit here and there, and don't want to have it paid for. At the end of the day, the bank doesn't own this. I do, and that means a lot to me. So we're going to be starting with obviously the rig that I own. This is mine. And then I'm going to be building off of that. My wife has a Lincoln Navigator that is essentially the same as a Ford Expedition. That's probably going to be one of the upcoming vehicles I'm going to be messing around with. We also have a couple pickup trucks there at the house that I use for work that I can bake some products off of for those. And eventually, you know, building some friends and family's cars for them. Or hopefully they let me build theirs, and we can get a bunch of different products for a bunch of different older vehicles. You know, at the end of the day, this thing is probably darn near as reliable as a 30-year-old Toyota. You know, wiring degrades at the same rate, doesn't matter who made it, things like that. So there are going to be issues, but if you're kind of handy and you can tackle those, then these are a really great start. Or there's a whole lot of different ones. You know, I think second generation Dodges, if you can afford to not really have a back seat, that would be a really, really good start, especially the half-ton trucks. They're pretty cheap. They're solid front axle. They're relatively strong. They don't have a lot of issues. I put a bunch of miles on that particular body style. Finding a clean one's a little difficult, but that can be done. And then if you wanted to bump up to 3/4 ton, I don't really think there's a bad choice. You know, and then you can get into a bunch of SUVs and moving on forward. But we're going to start making products here in the U.S. for cars that were essentially built in the U.S. And that's kind of the moving forward with it. This this venture is my second business that I own, so it's going to be moving at a pretty slow pace. This one, like I said, it's kind of a hobby. Part of the deal is anything that you guys buy from me essentially is going to get to roll into building this thing up the way I want it actually built when it's all done. You know, I really want to do a solid front axle swap on it. I want to do a motor swap of some kind, because the 454 throttle body, it does the job, but it drinks a lot of gas for not a lot of horsepower. I think I probably want to do a 12-valve Cummins. That's the ultimate dream. But the more likely option is it's going to get a 6-liter Chevy LS. And keep the factory trans, keep the factory most everything there. And then when I do my solid axle, I think I'm not really sure what direction I'm going to go with that. I'm pretty sure I want coils, but we'll find out when we get there. I'm going to start making some videos here and there to throw out there for the world, and I'm going to hopefully, you know, kind of the business plan is I'm going to move forward with building some of these slide boxes for some different cars, and things like that shower kit. I'm going to make a video on how to build that, and hopefully I can figure out how to make Amazon some kind of affiliate link where you guys can just buy what I bought online to do that. You know, things like these slides, I'm going to build those, and I will have things like tie downs for those slides for sale through Desert Grove. Right now everything is linked on my Instagram, or right now everything's run through my Instagram. It's Desert Grove Overland. If you search that, it's desert_grove_overland on Instagram. And yeah, you can follow along, and hopefully we can build this thing together. It'd be really cool if this little side venture retires me, but I doubt that, and I'm okay with that. But if we can just start building this market for American-made vehicles, I think that that's going to be where this hobby's headed. I don't think the barrier to entry that is currently there, with, you know, having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into this and be comfortable at it, is reasonable for most people. And I think there's a lot of people that would like to get into it, and get into it for a little cheaper. You know, I think Amazon or Facebook Marketplace is where I picked up quite a bit of the stuff that you see on here. And we can kind of do this whole thing together. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I'll have that linked in the description of this video, I guess, because that's how people do this. And hopefully my camera work gets better. This is the first video I've ever made, and it's a little awkward staring at a phone. So hopefully I can get better at this, and hopefully you guys follow along.